Hi, Will. How are you? So, all the audience, those who are here. Will we have around 200 sub people on Zoom, and then another similar number of folks on YouTube. Those who are watching it live, and basically, let me just introduce you to the audience. Will is a serial entrepreneur and venture investor. He is a founder and managing partner of Capria Ventures. Throughout his career, he has worked with the giants in the computer industry. Starting with Sun Microsystem and then Microsoft. Over there, Will has spent over a decade and building the entire Windows business. Basically, thank you so much, Will, for taking out time to interact with our kids. And first of all, like, what is the time over there?
It's actually not too late. It's 6:30 in the morning for me. I do a lot of business in India, so I'm pretty used to getting up early.
Yeah, thanks, Will. 6:30 a.m. and you're looking so fresh. And thanks for taking our time. Yeah,
Glad to be here. I'm very excited about what you guys are doing.
awesome, awesome. Well, we'll basically start with a fun question. And Wanted to basically understand that did you work closely with Bill Gates, and what made him different from other entrepreneurs who have had the fortune of, like you had the fortune of knowing? How is Bill different from others?
Uh, to answer your first question, I never worked directly for Bill Gates, but I did work closely with him on many different projects over the years. He was, of course, the instigator behind the Windows business and many other great things at Microsoft, and I was very involved in that. Everybody who was involved in Windows was very involved in Bill. And that actually leads to your second question about what differentiates him from other entrepreneurs. When I joined the Windows business, it might have been I started working on Internet Explorer back in the days and in the battle with Netscape, and then worked on digital media, and then worked on the entire Windows business. And it was sub $10 billion, and Bill had recently handed over the CEO role to Steve Ballmer. He became the chief software architect. And the thing that was, you'd expect a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company to be very involved in the flagship product, but at a business level, right, at a strategy level. And the remarkable thing about Mr. Gates is the fact that he was involved and understood the underlying technologies of almost every aspect of not just the Windows business, but almost everything Microsoft was doing back in the day. And it was just remarkable as a technologist myself to see that he could have a conversation around business strategy in one hand, and then the next moment be talking about what advances you're making to the API that lets you get better managed code working on the Windows system. And so it was truly remarkable the level of versatility and knowledge he had, but also his skill in being able to communicate with a hardcore engineer, again, about the future of technology, as well as with a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation who wants to talk about how they can best make use of the new version of Windows or Office or whatever it might be to help grow their business. So those are a couple things that really set him apart. The other thing that I think he is remarkable at, which many, I think, good engineers and entrepreneurs are, is curiosity, and just innate curiosity. And if you have that from an academic sense, that's great, and you can be a great academic. You're curious about things, you explore them, you write about them. Well, Bill is curious about things. He explored them, and then he'd build businesses around them, or inspire others to build businesses around them. So I think that sense of curiosity and wonder, and also an unflapping belief in the fact that software is going to change the world for the better, and can and will do so, and then led the industry to do so.
Yeah. Can you tell us can you tell our audience what's the unlimited potential group at Microsoft, and what was your function over there when you were working with Microsoft?
Well, rewind a little bit of history. So I was leading the global Windows business, and in fact, that's how I first started coming to India. It was in 2002, 2003, and I became one of the most senior business leaders in the company to come to India regularly to help guide the team in our subsidiary here to really grow a business, which was relatively small, a couple $100 million at the time. And that's where I really saw the opportunity for technology to change the lives of not just millions of people, but hundreds of millions of people and billions of people. And really to change the lives of people who had no access to technology otherwise. And that required a fundamental change of how we and others in the technology industry were designing and building products. They had to be built for affordability. They had to be built for low bandwidth or no bandwidth environments. They had to be built for easy distribution. They had to be really relevant to people's lives in a way that a computer designed for the enterprise in the Western world just wasn't. And so I really fell in love with that problem. And I when I sort of finished my tour of duty with the Windows business, I said, well, what am I going to do next? And the answer was, well, let's put together a group at Microsoft that is focused on that exact problem. How do you effectively build technology and services? And this is in the early days of mobile, by the way. So we were looking at mobile and cloud services at the same time. How do you build technologies and services that are going to be relevant to the next billion people? And we named that effort the Unlimited Potential effort or challenge or effort, and built a team of both engineers and business people in Redmond, where the headquarters of Microsoft is, and also in other parts of the world to focus on that exact problem.
Awesome, awesome. So let's take you back to the time and 1983 when you graduated from Brown University. So, what difference do you see in the education then and now? And anything you think current students could benefit from the old days at the time when you guys were studying at Brown?
What I actually looked up some numbers yesterday because I was curious about how many people graduated in the United States in computer science back then, and it was about 25,000 in the U.S. graduated that year in 1983, and the number peaked a couple of years later at about 40,000, and then had a gradual decline. And in fact, computer science really fell out of favor as a leading forefront science degree for people to achieve, and it's only recently recovered in the U.S. to back to those numbers of 40 years ago. Now, of course, in the meantime, as you well know, the number of graduates in computer science in India is actually over 2 lakh a year right now, right. That's at least what I looked up yesterday.
Yeah,
And
it's roughly around 4.5 lakh now.
4.5 lakh. Okay. All right. Well, my data is even old already. And so I think that the things that have changed, the fundamental thing that's changed is, and I was, the leading edge of people doing this, is saying, look, let's not just figure out how to build hardcore technology. How do you build the next microprocessor? How do you build the next operating system that'll go on a high-end workstation, which did at Sun Microsystems? How do you apply graphics that many people who came out of Brown Computer Science went to work at Pixar and built some movies that everybody loves? But how do you make this technology fundamentally applied to everything that people do? And I think that's the thing that has changed, is that a computer science degree is now an enabler, or even without a computer science degree, people learning computer science skills enables them to contribute to almost every aspect of life. And that's something that was definitely not the case back 40 years ago at all. And so if you're a biologist and you don't have skills and understanding around how machine learning works or how big data can be applied to your problem, if you're a sociologist and you don't know how to think about about data and technology and how it affects people, you're not good at those at those fields. And so I think that's the shift that has been interesting. And in fact, there's no end in sight from that perspective. That the technology skills are going to be not just advantage you, but they're going to be fundamentally necessary for you to have excellent technology skills if you're going to participate in any discipline, whether you work for a technology company or a company in many other fields. They all need to have people with strong tech skills.
Got it. Got it. And basically, like, if you want to take something from the current times to your time, what do you think, like, what do you see and hope you had access to during your college time, which is existing in the current system?
Well, when I started, open source didn't exist. It really wasn't there. The closest thing that's not quite true. The closest thing there was to it was Berkeley Unix. But there was no Apache server, there was no PHP, there was no Java, none of that stuff was there. And so there were most of the building blocks that we built on in the day were pieces of proprietary software of some form or another, or things that you and your colleagues built yourselves. And the thing that's fundamentally different now, and Masai is doing this, is you're able to provide these giant building blocks of everybody stands on the shoulders of giants before them, or teams of giants who have built amazing systems that enables just a tremendous level of productivity, and enables you to go from knowing very little about technology to being a full stack engineer in a remarkable period of time. And that might have taken 4 or 8 years back in the day for me, and now you're doing that in 4 or 8 months. That's a big change.
Yeah.
So I'd say that now, of course, the same thing is true if you rewound 20 years before me, right? People were writing stuff in assembly code. They were wiring up they were wiring up CPUs with discrete logic and transistors, and microprocessors barely existed. I worked on one of the first Intel microprocessors when I was in high school, the 4004. Right, because if you look at the history of microprocessors, that was Intel's very first thing that was built to power a calculator made for Texas Instruments. So everybody has been continued to build and up the game of technology that underlies the things that we do, and I think that that's an advantage that today's students continue to have, and that it changes every year. There's more and more things you can learn that will help you become more efficient, more effective, do more faster, do more better than everybody could even the year before that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like, we are really lucky to be in this era where there are so many things that can happen at a very fast speed as compared to what it was way back.
Well, totally. And the other thing, of course, is that it is a global community that contributes, right? And you look at the best open source movements, you'll see people from literally all over the planet who've contributed to them. And that certainly didn't happen, right? The people that worked on Berkeley Unix back in the day were all, actually started in Berkeley and they were around Silicon Valley, and maybe a few on the East Coast, and they all had to be, connected to each other, physically, not over the internet. So yeah, the world has changed massively for the better, from the perspective of people that love to apply technology to hard problems.
Correct. So you have worked with many entrepreneurs in India and many in the Valley as well. What is the parallel you see between Indian tech ethos and Silicon Valley? So, in general.
I have the benefit of now, so just more context. We started United Ventures in India in 2012. And started investing in companies, and we're super proud to have invested in you a year or two ago, whenever that was. But back in 2015, we took that same concept globally, and that's what Capria is, which is the logo on the screen behind me now. So it's taking the things that we're learning about investing in technology-driven companies in India and doing similar work in other tech hotspots around the world. And we now look at 15 of the rising entrepreneurial hubs around the world. 2 of them happen to be in India, which we look at Bangalore and Delhi as the 2 leading spots there. but we also get to see what the other ones look like as well, and that means we're looking at Nairobi, and we're looking at Sao Paulo, and we're looking at Cairo, right? And so we're and Jakarta, and so it's interesting to see the evolution of these different tech hubs around the world. I think of them, putting China aside because it's no longer an emerging market. China is very much here. It's not an emerging tech hub. It's just the cities with the developers in China are at or on par or even starting to surpass those in Silicon Valley. But
Yes.
I'd say that Bangalore and Delhi offer some remarkable parallels to where Silicon Valley is. And 5 years ago, I would have said they're 10 years behind. But now I'd say, maybe less than 5 years behind. I think things are catching up very rapidly.
Yeah.
And so obviously the quality and capability of Indian entrepreneurs has been known and well understood and developers for many years, for decades. But I think the thing we look at is the evolution of the ecosystem, right? So are the right people there that can do everything from being a hardcore full stack developer on one hand to a product manager to an attorney to an operations person, and all those people readily available to create companies? Is there financial capital that's available, everything from the super early pre-seed stage friends and family money all the way up to scaling up to what it took to get Flipkart into the orbit it was in. So earliest stage capital, late stage capital. And the answer is that India has all of those now. And 5 years ago, even, it didn't have all of them. It had some of them, or it had, but now I'd say it has not only has them all, but they're catching up rapidly to what you're seeing in Silicon Valley.
Got it. So I think that clearly states why there is a very high interest from a venture funds to invest in Indian tech startups, because this is what make India special in terms of the quality of people, those who are now emerging, and the way we are producing things. I think we are catching up with Valley really, really fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's no question. And now, one thing we use when we look at all these different tech hubs around the world is how fast are deals getting funded. And if you will, that's a very objective measure of the quality of the ecosystem, the quality of all of the components, the people that participate in the ecosystem, because that tells you capital is flows globally, right? And like water running down a hill, it finds the shortest path to get to where it wants to go. And so capital can get out there as it needs, and deals are not quite closing quite as fast in India as they do in Silicon Valley, but they're getting there. And so you're seeing deals that close now in weeks that might have taken months before.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley made those deals close in days. I'm not saying it's a good thing, by the way. It's a measure, but it's as an investor, it's pretty scary, frankly. I think there's a lot of bad deals that are going to get funded for the wrong reasons, based on a frothy market. And so there will be natural corrections. There always have been. I was around for the 2000 correction, 2008. I've seen these things before. We'll all see them again. But the fact that we're in the middle of a raging pandemic and things are still going at the speed they're going from an investment perspective just tells you how much optimism the world has for how technology can change things for the better. And frankly, the advances in remote work and in the acceptance of digital technologies into society at large have been accelerated by at least a decade as a result of the pandemic. And so I think that for all the technologists here at Masai, this is a big benefit for you, right? Everybody's trying to figure out, how do I better apply technology and remote working groups and people and work at home and all the rest of the things that have been happening over the last 18 months. How do I better apply those to my business advantage? Because I know that somebody down the street is doing the same thing. And before it was a nice to have, and now it's a must have, and
Yeah.
it's doing so, I think, for the better.
So that leads to another very important question, Will. What next for us, in your opinion? As in, where do you see this entire tech industry moving in India and also in the world? Because pandemic has changed one thing, that Indian developers can now also start contributing in the valley companies, those who are following the remote culture. So, what next for us?
Well, I mean, to be clear, I was a chairman of a global tech company after I left Microsoft for a number of years, and we had developers in India, we had developers in Poland, we had developers in a bunch of places, and they were equal members of the team. So I think that that's been around for plenty of years. But I think what's happened is that people recognize outside of the core tech industry this can happen. So I think that's one thing that's very interesting, is that people graduating with capabilities and skills in India can now work not only in a hardcore tech job, but in a almost, again, any other industry that is starting to apply technology to meet their needs. And so I think that that's going to open up the availability of even more jobs and roles for highly skilled developers in India to contribute globally. So I think I see no end in sight for that. I think it will continue, and there's a couple of things that have to get right, which we could talk about, but I think that the opportunity is very much there. I think that the continued evolution of low-cost data, which is, Geo certainly pushed that out to the edges in India very nicely. But it's, when I first started working in India, it was a real challenge to even get broadband to somebody's home, little less be able to sit in a in a tier 3 city or in the outskirts of a tier 3 city and do a hotspot with your Geo phone and be able to code as efficiently as anybody else. So the world has changed dramatically on that front, which again, it opens up opportunity, right? It means that people anywhere in India, literally anywhere, or virtually anywhere, can be effective members of a global team. And that was not the case even just a couple of years ago. So I see that continuing to happen. I see really no upper limit on that. There's no reason why the skills that are being developed here cannot be applied globally if people get things right. I think I'd offer one key thing that's really needed is communication. And if you look over the years that I've led technology teams and business teams, sometimes you have very good engineers who simply are not good communicators, and they don't go very far, frankly. They don't rise in their capability. They may be technically excellent, but if they're not great communicators, they're not going to do well really in an organization. They can do well by themselves. And so I think that's a fundamental skill that some Indian engineers have and some don't. And so I think certainly as Masai, I know that you place a high value on this, and it's one that both while people are with the school now and learning, but also afterwards, they need to continue to say, how do I improve my communication skills, both written and oral. Not just about technology subjects, but about how do I work with other people? How do I talk about the strategy of the company? How my technology can apply to it? How do I talk about the future of where my efforts can go that are beyond the nuts and bolts of some particular piece of code that they're writing today? And so those communication skills are probably one of the most fundamental things that. It's a big advantage for Indian entrepreneurs over Chinese entrepreneurs, by the way. Chinese technologists entrepreneurs have very poor English skills for the most part. And so I think that the strong English skills and honing those written and oral communication abilities is a huge asset to people that want to build a long-term career in India or around the world.
Correct. So I think this is one thing which we keep on seeing in people in India, despite the focus is more towards becoming a great programmers rather than being a good communicator, and that is something which might be one of the reason. The next question that I wanted to basically ask you is that despite the fact that India's formal education system is producing millions of engineers every year, and still the most prominent issue is that Indian and foreign tech giants think that Indians are unemployable in the current day and age, and majority of them, not some of them, but majority of them are unemployable. So do you think communication skill is one very important factor around that?
I, I do. I think it's vital. And I think there's a few, look, the formal education system in India, we could talk for a long time about the challenges there. But I think that it's communication skills are vital. So I look back, I was a strong technologist, but I thankfully had a girlfriend who subsequently became my wife, who was an English major, and she taught me how to write. And I was not a good writer when I came out of high school, and I probably wouldn't have graduated college if she hadn't taught me how to write well. And that is used. I use to this day. I mean, a couple hours from now, I'm going to work on my written skills again on how to create a really great investor pitch. And so, if you're even if you're a deep code technologist, you have to be able to write and communicate well, and you also have to be able to stand up in front of a room and get others to understand what you're talking about and to follow you. And you have to be able to work well with others. And those soft skills are ones that aren't really taught in the Indian formal education system, right?
Correct.
And so I think embracing the importance of those soft skills and really going after them, taking a class in creative writing, not technical writing, but creative writing, right? Learning how to write and communicate things that are outside of your area of comfort. Is something that can be really helpful to people. Learning how to give a public presentation of whether you're talking about how you're part of a system works to a bunch of engineers, or you're talking about how a big idea you have could be transformative to a company. You need to be able to stand up in front of the room and do that with confidence and clarity and brevity. And conviction, and those are things that again most students don't come out of a formal education degree and know how to do that. And so, and that's globally, by the way. It's not a problem only in India. That communication challenge is an issue for all people that go through a tech or any kind of a deep tech education system. They tend not to be adequately focused on the soft skills that are fundamental to their success.
Correct. So a lot of audience that we have is from the engineering background, okay? And what do you think are some of the most important tips from your experience that they should know before they start their career or they launch their career in programming?
Well, obviously, repeat what I just said about so stay focused on not only the technology things that I think you can tell them better what to do than I can. My tech is about 40 years out of date, but learn how to be a good communicator. Learn how to work well in a team, and then do things that illustrate that you've done that. Right, that have some proof points, right? So people are very proud of, hey, I built this cool piece of technology and look what it does. But if you say, I built this cool piece of technology and I worked with this guy, and this woman, and that person over there, and the five of us created this even neater thing. That shows that you're somebody that knows how to work on a team. And I think that the importance of teamwork in a multidisciplinary business, which many of Masai graduates will end up, right? They'll be not just working on a core tech team, but they will be a tech member of a team that's got other people on the team. That'll have everything from product managers to biologists could be on the team, and so being able to work with other people to understand them, to communicate what you do. And how you can help them, I think, is vital. Another thing I'd say is the speed of evolution of technology is just continues to astound all of us, right? And so how do you stay on top of that, right? How do you make sure that the Angular, if you're working on that last year, is that going to be the right thing to be working on next year, right? Well, maybe or maybe not. And so how do you know which tech is coming along that you need to explore? And of course you want to be deep and great at the thing that people want to hire you for, but you also want to have knowledge of what things are coming next or might be better ways to do things. And I'll give you an example of that. So we had built our e-commerce system at my startup that we ended up selling to Microsoft in C++. And it was a fairly conventional client server arrangement. And the server ran on Big Sun Iron, and the client ran either Windows, Mac, or a couple other things. And we realized that we had to reinvent that as HTML and browsing started to take over the world. It was barely there when we started. And so we rewrote the entire thing in Python. And two guys in my team, two of our co-founders said, we're going to do this. And the rest of us were like, what the heck is Python? Right? And why does this make sense? This was in 1993. So Python had really just came out back then. And they said, look, we're going to build this. We got an Apache server with PHP and Python. And that's going to be our development environment. We're going to rewrite the entire thing in a couple of months. And they did that. And so if they had not been able to embrace the new tech that was coming along and to take a risk with that and convince the others that this was a good thing to do, we never would have sold that company for what we did, and we wouldn't have had the success we had. So those are engineers who were at the forefront of seeing new things that were coming, and were able to then bring the team along with them to embrace that and then to show it works, right? It's one thing to talk about it, but then to actually demonstrate it and make it happen is key.
Yeah. So the big question that all of us have, and like all the people, those who are in our audience have, will tech jobs in India continue to grow? That's one fundamental question which everyone has, because there are so many things that people keep on reading without even knowing much about it. Like, for example, no code technologies and other things which are coming in, and people are not able to understand, is it going to grow or is it going to become more automated? How is it going to shape up?
Well, I think the answer is both are going to happen. I think no code movement is great. And I have an investment with a former colleague, and he's built a no-code system that's really quite phenomenal, and it's going to help bring a whole lot more people into ability to make customizable end-user customizable apps. And we use some no-code solutions ourselves, just as a venture firm. Now, a few years ago, we just would have had nothing. We would have had a boring website and whatever else. Now we can use no-code tools to help make our internal operations more effective and make our external presentation of some of the things that we do better. So that's going to happen. But does that mean that jobs go away? No, it just means the jobs change. And it means that more people come into the world of being able to get access to technology and use technology. So I think that there will never be a lack of opportunity for hardcore engineers who have the soft skills I described earlier. Yes. and can work in a multidisciplinary environment. Those would be to me the core thing: technology, soft skills, and multidisciplinary. And if you can fit into that world, then again the opportunity will continue and the growth will continue, and there's no limit. If you're stuck as a technologist that really only works in one domain, that does not constantly reinvent yourself, if you're not able to communicate well with others and work on teams and do the things that are necessary and if you're not able to embrace a multidisciplinary environment, I think then you might have limitations in your career. But if you got those three things right, plenty of upside. And I think India is going to have no shortage of ability to disproportionately influence the world on that front, because of the quality of technologists that can be created and of the innate English capabilities that pervade the country.
Correct. So I think, to reiterate on what you are saying for our budding students, those who are basically going to start their career, I think like understanding of the technology that you are working on, plus awareness around the new technologies that are coming in, and also the communication skills part is the fundamental around how they are going to progress this tech revolution which is happening around us.
Yeah. That's it. It's a simple formula. Not easy to execute, but pretty easy to say. Uh,
Correct, correct. It looks like pretty easy to basically speak about it, but it's very hard to execute on that front for the student. Yeah.
and it does it. I'll repeat the point I made about continuous reinvention, right? And I'll go back to my co-founders that threw away our entire C++ code base and rebuilt it in Python and PHP.
Correct.
So if they had not, and it was their code base they threw away, right?
Yeah.
So if they had not been able to do that, right, to recognize that they could throw away that work and make something better, we wouldn't have gotten where we got to. And so I think that everybody that works in Masai needs to recognize that anything they're doing today could be obsolete tomorrow, and the best person to figure that out is them, right?
Yeah.
Don't wait for somebody else to tell you that the technology stack you've been using, this particular tool in your full stack arsenal, is yesterday's tool, right? You be the one to figure it out, and
Correct.
that I think is what's going to help make for some long and accelerating careers.
Correct. Correct. So, Will, post-pandemic, what do you think in India, the industries, those who are existing currently, which are the ones, those who are going to benefit immensely from great programmers going forward? Like for the next decade, what do you think? Which are the industries, those who are going to be, um, where probably they were not having the kind of quality developers earlier, but they are now going to basically be using it going forward.
Well, I mean, I think that this is less of an industry than a
Yeah,
tech domain, but I think that education technology has advanced by more than a decade in less than a year.
correct.
That and so that's one, and you see it in the valuations of ed tech companies, by the way. Byju's is certainly on the right end of that story. So is our friends at QMath that we invested in when they were doing teaching math off of paper worksheets in 2013. They're now doing incredibly well, serving math to people all around the world, using tech and really great learning management systems and everything else. So the whole world of application of technology to teaching and learning, not just in core education domains, but also think about continuing education. Right. So somebody wants to learn how to be a better plumber. They're going to get benefit of technology and content that's going to help them learn how to be a better plumber. Somebody wants to get their very first job as a carpenter, might learn half of what they need to learn online. Again, 2 years ago, that probably wasn't going to happen. And so I think that domain of teaching and learning online is going to continue to have ripple effects throughout all industries, because it's now, if you will, democratized the acquisition of knowledge and the delivery of knowledge. And so all the technology is necessary to do that well. And those who are building those technologies and applying those technologies will do well. I'll change gears completely. My son is about to get a PhD at Caltech, and his study is around application of DNA to computing. Now, this is a forefront science that many of us can only even hardly imagine what that means. But they're figuring that out, and he's a big data guy, right? He works on big clusters, and he's got to be able to process massive amounts of data and to figure out through machine learning and other techniques what's actually happening in subcellular and molecular systems, and use that to then drive a biological program to create new things of synthetic biology that can go and do things like compute, right? Well, that's an application that, again, was not there 5 or 10 years ago, right? You did not have access to affordable computation at massive scale. You saw that Tesla just built the world's 5th largest supercomputer in order to process all of the data they need for machine learning to enable cars to drive the way they want them to drive, which is not good enough yet. I use one, and I would not trust my life to this thing for sure. So, but But that the fact that they had to go and build a custom supercomputer to process the massive amounts of signal information, predominantly video, that's what they're focused on, and to be able to make that work, they couldn't use something off the shelf, just tells you that they're taking, again, forefront application of machine learning and massive amounts of video, and using that to create a product that's going to, you know, change and make the world safer and better for so many people. So I think that the application of the technology skills that Masai is teaching will continue to proliferate, and there's virtually nowhere that those technologies are not going to provide value. You think about the fact that low-cost sensors are everywhere now, right? You got sensors in dairy farms. You know how much milk a cow is producing by the minute based on what it eats. Well, who's going to write the code to figure out how to optimize the feed systems for the cows so that they produce more milk? Well, right. So it's everywhere. And so being able to process data and make decisions, and how those decisions, whether they be automated or driven by humans, the processing of that information and doing it effectively and well means that it's, again, sky's the limit for where we can apply the technologies that we're learning at Masai.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think the applications are just opening up from the industry-wide acceptance around the software developers and the need to use programming to solve most of the things which were not earlier solved by by having the operations and sales folks solving it. So yeah, I think this pandemic has actually accelerated the entire thing that was supposed to happen in probably 5 years or 10 years in just 1 year.
Easy. And look, it's gonna really change, and you know, we're hopefully at the tail end of wave 2 in India. People are worried about wave 3, as they should be. The fact that the pandemic has forced the world to recognize that you can be productive not being face to face is a giant acceleration of everything that technologists have done for a long time. We actually, I live in Seattle, and we have our global team here together for the first time in 15 months. We flew them all here as soon as everybody got vaccinated, and we're spending 2 weeks working together. And it's a really fantastic experience to do that after not doing it for 18 months. But we also know that we're going to go back to where we all live and continue to be as effective as ever. You look at a company like Automatic, right? The guys that build WordPress, they've been virtual from the very beginning. They've never had a corporate headquarters, right? So they learned this early on, but now the rest of the world is catching up, and everything from venture capital to I think it's hard to do, you know, wet labs in biology virtually. There's some things hard to do manufacturing for Tesla. I saw a really great work at home with a guy, you know, assembling a car in his living room. There's a good meme that went around there. So there's some things you can't do at home if atoms are involved, but when electrons are involved, you can do it at home. You can do it in small groups, in coffee shops, say coffee day. You can do it anywhere. And so I think that's been proven to the world, and that's not going to go away.
Correct. I think this is the most fundamental lesson which people have learned in last 1 year. That I was reading one tweet today, which was that the competitors of airlines is not among themselves. Like the competition is not among themselves. It is with Zoom that is happening right now. So,
although if anybody has flown recently, the airports are as full as ever. I did a business trip for the first time 2 weeks ago, and it felt just like 18 months ago. It was no different. So I think that while everything we say about Zoom and work for home is very much here, it's not going to obviate the need for face-to-face communication. It might just change how it's done. It might mean that it's done 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. It might mean that it's done once a quarter instead of once a month. So the face-to-face is still going to be here. It's the way that humans interact and connect with each other. And frankly, we all know what Zoom fatigue feels like. Probably a few people are feeling it a little bit right now. It takes, you know, they've shown that it actually takes more processing time in your brain to process the video right here that we're doing than it does if we were having this exact conversation in 3D sitting across the table from each other. So it actually is truly more physically fatiguing to do this. So I think that there will continue to be plenty of reasons why people will get together, but they will do so with also the strong knowledge and proof that they can be super effective working in virtual separate environments. And maybe even more so, right? Who wants to sit in traffic for 2 hours each way, getting into an office and right over in Electronic City versus being able to take those two hours and program. And I think those companies will recognize that they can be productive, more productive that way.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we have a couple of questions which the people are asking on YouTube as well as on Zoom. So I'll pick few questions and would love if you answer them. So the first one is you work with a lot of developers, and what's one thing that differentiates between Indian software developers and other countries' developer from your point of view in terms of? Also, there is one associated question with this. How different is work-life balance in India for software engineers compared to those of the Silicon Valley? So these are the two questions. One is on YouTube and other one is on Zoom. I combined the questions.
Interesting questions. There's so much variation. It's pretty hard to stereotype. So I'm not sure I'm willing to stereotype on that front. I do think that in general, to my earlier point, if I take teams where I had Chinese developers, I had Polish developers, I had Indian developers. In general, the Indian developers' skills in English really do separate them, and that helps them rise to management and leadership roles more quickly. And you see that by the CEOs of Google and Microsoft as examples of that. And so I think that's something that certainly plays to their differential benefit, but there's certainly plenty of people in Eastern Europe or China or elsewhere, Latin America, who have English skills also. But I think overall that's an advantage that Indian developers have. I think that the work ethic and the mathematical training that's sort of beaten into Indians at a young age is helpful. But I think it also can be challenging because they have to break out of the rote system that they learned from. So if they're able to break out of that and to learn about how to continuously learn, that the process of learning and then applying that knowledge is more important than having the ultimate knowledge by memorization that came through your education system. Those that do break out of that then stand out. Because they have the benefit of knowing that they can learn these core capabilities, but also then apply that more creatively and broadly. Versus quality of work-life balance for hardcore developers is pretty much the same around the world. It's a challenge. It doesn't matter whether you're in Silicon Valley or Bangalore or Cairo. If you're a hardcore developer and you're behind on your project, the work-life balance is hard. So I think that it's a decision that teams have to make, and they have to work together to decide how do they scope things. I think that the adoption of Agile really has helped a lot. Right, that's something that happened when I was running the Windows business. We did not have Agile. It was waterfall and it was a very long river before you got to the next process, part of the process. So I think Agile is probably helping work-life balance a bit if people use it well. Shorter sprints and time to breathe at the end of it, and also not having then a pent-up set of things deadlines that are looming over people because you have shorter term deadlines and therefore you can schedule your development and your life around those better. So I think that continuing to embrace that and do that well will be good for everybody's work-life balance.
Got it. So there's one question which was asked on YouTube. Although we have briefly covered that topic earlier as well, that what is the future of coding with two alternatives, no code movement which is happening around us and advanced tech such as GPT-3 picking up, what is the future of programming that you see?
Yeah, I'll come back to my point on multidisciplinary
Yeah.
application of coding, right? And so just like microcomputers brought the availability of computation so much more, it democratized it, right? It brought it from the back room of an enterprise that had an air conditioned room and a bunch of guys that control a bunch of high end computers that might or might not have time sharing and nobody really has access to it. To anybody who wants to has got access to any amount of computing power they want, just about on their wrist or like on this ring that I'm wearing right now that measures my sleep activity and everything else, and it's more powerful than many computers that I coded when I was in college. So that democratization of access to technology is going to not again obviate the need for the people that build the technology or apply the technology. It's going to just create broader realms in which they can operate.
Yeah.
So in the world of no code, you're going to have to there's going to be even more places to build better no code systems that are applied to different domains, right? So think about all the different things that the world does. How do you customize and build and adapt tools and technologies that will enable those people to then make use of technology to solve their whatever the needs are. So I think it means you have to broaden your view, right? It means that your interest as a technologist and a developer is not only in the tech industry. It could be in every other industry also, right? So we've got an investment in an ag tech fund in Brazil, and there's another very good one in India as well, that focus entirely on people that are building and applying technology to agriculture. Well, again, 5 or 10 years ago, that wasn't particularly interesting. It was a domain of a very expensive, large organized agriculture could afford to do this. Well, now it's moving down to the 1 hectare farmer can get access to ag tech technologies that can help them become more efficient. And so I think that the imperative for anybody that's pursuing a career in technology right now is to be thinking about how can the technology that they're learning be applied to virtually any domain on the planet, and then how do they prove that they have the adaptability, right, to pick up and say, hey, I was working on an ag tech project over here, and now I'm going to go and work on something in a biology system for another company halfway around the world because I can apply some of the same things I know over there.
Correct.
So I think that adaptability, the curiosity to go and explore those things, and then the willingness to reinvent oneself are what's going to help ensure that you have long careers in technology.
Cool. So, Phil, basically, there is one question which I wanted to ask you. There is a trend which is picking up in India as well, that the tech giants, those who are over here, as well as some of the fastest growing unicorns, they have stopped giving importance to degrees as compared to the skill set that the students have, and they have built their entire interview process in such a manner that they'll be able to assess the quality of the person. What do you think? What is happening in US around the similar lines, or is it not happening? What's your take on that particular thing?
Well, we started this interview with you asking about a certain person who famously does not have a degree, Mr.
Yeah.
Gates. And he actually taught himself computer science while not going to lectures.
Yeah.
And so I think that the world has proven that people without formal 4-year college degrees can do very well. And so I think it's all about showing that you have the ability to learn and to apply that learning to solve problems, and can do that as effectively as anybody else. And
Yeah.
for some people, a 4-year college path is the right path for them, and that's fine. And I particularly think it's great if you don't focus only on technology skills, but you focus on soft skills and maybe learn a little bit about philosophy or art along the way. So I think that there's things that help make people better human beings in the long term that you can learn in 4-year programs. but I think also if you want to just learn a hardcore skill and be able to apply it to a job rapidly, the kinds of things that the Masai is doing are incredible, and it's going to be really empowering a lot of people, and it's going to let you get jobs in virtually, again, any industry, not just the unicorns of India, but things that companies you might not have ever heard of before, but that are giants in their own right in other industries, but that are starting to embrace technology and hire technologists to solve problems. So I think that nobody should feel bad about having a 4-year degree, and if they learn something, that's great. But you also shouldn't feel like you must get one in order to be successful in the world. You clearly, that's been well proven from Bill Gates on down, that if you're exceptional at what you do and you apply yourself and are continuously learning, that you can do well without a 4-year degree.
Correct. So, well, last question. We have a couple of more questions, but I'll take one more, which is, now since after pandemic, I think there are many companies in US, those who are completely following the remote working scenarios. So what are the skill set that is required in the Indian developers to crack the jobs in Silicon Valley based companies, or probably in China based companies? What do they look for?
Well, I'll come back to the earlier conversation we had. I mean, there's obviously going to be core tech skills that they need to be able to show that they're state of the art on whether it's full stack, front end, back end, wherever it is, right? They've got to have those, and that's table stakes, right? If you don't have that, you're just not going to get very far. But I think the thing that's going to set you apart is the ability to show that you have excellent written communications and team working abilities. And if you show that you can speak cogently, that you can communicate efficiently and effectively and frequently, that you can work with other people doing the same thing, that's what's needed. And as we were discussing earlier, there are new challenges that come with remote work, right? There's things you figure out when you're next to each other, when you're grabbing a lunch with your fellow developer, when you're standing around waiting to get some samosas that you're not going to have when you're in the remote situation. So you have to compensate for what you're losing in face-to-face. To how do you gain things in the remote world to compensate for that? So, and a lot of it has to do with communication. So I'd say that continuing to always push the envelope on the skills you have, and an ability to demonstrate that you've applied those skills, right? Not just to say, hey, I speak well and I can write a good paragraph, but saying, and here's results that I achieved because I took my excellence in technology along with my excellence in communication and teamwork, and therefore I'm the right engineer for you.
Got it. I think this is very, very insightful. Well, I think many people, those who are asking this question, and now since the opportunities have opened up, it is going to be a nice thing for Indian developers. Now they can start working with Silicon Valley teams, and they can contribute on a global level rather than just contributing in India alone.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this brings us to the end of the session. Well, thank you so much for taking out time, that too in the early in the morning, and interacting with our kids as well as interacting with us. And it was a very, very insightful as well as lovely session. And
thank you for inviting me. And I read through your impact book earlier, and I'll tell you, it truly is. It's an inspiration for me and my colleagues at Unitas to see the work that Masai is doing, and to see how many people that we're helping move from wherever they were to a career in the greatest technologies that have ever been, in such a short and effective period of time. So I think it's I love the work you're doing, and I hope you can keep it up. And I'm looking forward to going 10 times and 100 times more scale, which I know is your aspiration as well. So
yes.
The future is bright on that front, and look forward to being on the journey with you.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And we are going to ship the impact book to you, so you'll get it
Great.
in some time, and then probably this is a good starting point for us after 2 years when we wanted to basically journal the entire impact that we have created. I think we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, as we accelerate, and again, this wouldn't have happened as easily if we're doing this all, in-person model that you started with, and the fact that you can now do this entirely, and you've proven it can be done entirely online is just phenomenal in terms of ability to impact, again, somebody working with a geo hotspot in a village where is going to be able to be a part of Masai, right? And that was not the case even, a couple of years ago. So congratulations to you and your team and for everything you're doing here, for impacting India and the world.
Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much for the kind words.